crazy. Shedeur Sanders admitted he might not even be with the Cleveland Browns next year. He was honest on this. He answered this question very, very honest and said, look, I don't even know if I'm be here next year. There's a lot of sabotage going on, all types of stuff. You know what I mean? So let's get into what
it's a new week and you have to focus on the next opponent. So like you could look at past notes and things, that's okay, but I think having a fresh set of eyes is okay.
The situation surrounding Shedeur Sanders feels far heavier than a typical end-of-season storyline. What surfaced wasn't routine frustration wrapped in optimism or the usual athlete speak about next year. It was something more revealing, an unguarded glimpse into uncertainty, shifting power dynamics, and a future that suddenly feels far less settled than anyone wants to admit.
All that shit that they was talking about, Dylan was more professional, he was more ready, he was more NFL ready, all this shit. What is so sad, bro, is how much racism kept this man from playing snaps. I hope he get traded from Cleveland. I hope he requests a fucking trade at the end of the season, bro, after he done proved all his worth. I pray to God the Lions get Shedeur Sanders, bro, because you want to know why the Browns do not deserve him. They're a racist, poverty-ass franchise that let old grandfathered in NFL good old boy rules.
When a quarterback in that position speaks the way he did, it forces everyone paying attention to pause and rethink everything they thought they understood about stability, commitment, and direction inside the Cleveland Browns organization.
Nothing's even promised for next year. Do you still not feel a commitment from the Browns about next year and you being the starter?
Nah, I don't think it's about feeling a commitment. I don't think it's about anything of that. It's about controlling what you can control as a person, as a player. I think I have to do my part. You know, I think I have to do my part and, you know, get some wins. I think I have to do my part and play clean football.
This wasn't the language of optimism or future hype. It wasn't about growth or selling next season as a fresh start. What came through was a clear recognition that nothing is guaranteed, that presence isn't a slogan but a requirement, and that wearing the uniform today doesn't promise you'll be wearing it tomorrow. That mindset doesn't come from comfort. It comes from awareness.
The sabotage continue. Now y'all know all week long we've been tracking here on the channel these offensive linemen doing weird and spooky things in the Shedeur Sanders department. One being not blocking, two being look like they want to sack Shedeur. Now, with all of that being said, bro, people been breaking down Shedeur film, and in the process of them breaking down the damn film, we're noticing different things, like I said last video, with the offensive linemen. Now,
what stood out most was how calmly that awareness was delivered. There was no panic, no emotional spillover, no theatrics, just a controlled understanding that in this league, circumstances turn fast, and control is always partial, no matter how much work you put in.
It's simple. Everybody who was complicit in Shedeur Sanders not playing NFL football until the 13th week of the season needs to be fired. Needs to be fired immediately. 11 for 20, 209 yards, touchdown, interception. Could have had 2 to 3 touchdowns more. Could have had 300 yards, 3-something touchdowns if Jerry Jeudy didn't do what he did and he didn't have other drops. So
when a player at that stage speaks that way, it signals conversations happening behind closed doors, conversations fans aren't hearing. It suggests the air isn't as clear as it looks and that trust is being tested on multiple levels. This isn't just about wins and losses. It's about the environment. It's about whether development is being supported or quietly complicated by forces that never show up on a stat sheet. There's a difference between internal competition and external interference, and once a player hints at obstacles beyond performance, the entire season is reframed. Every week being framed as a reset sounds like coach speak until you understand why it keeps being repeated. When continuity isn't guaranteed, the present becomes the only safe place to stand. Preparation shifts from long-term growth to short-term survival. Growth doesn't stop, but the margin for error vanishes. Every rep matters more. Every decision carries extra weight. Against defenses like Pittsburgh, physicality stops being a matchup note and becomes a test of resilience. Units that swarm, hit, and pressure relentlessly force a quarterback to either trust what he sees or hesitate just long enough for everything to collapse. That trust isn't automatic. It's built through repetition, failure, correction, and the willingness to step into chaos without flinching.
give me
mean to tell me it's possible that Shedeur actually had the wrong plays on his wristband? You know, you mean to tell me it's possible the plays on Shedeur's wristband wasn't matching the calls from the offensive coordinator? Is that possible? Tell me, why is it that crazy things only happen to Shedeur Sanders? The game started off like things were about to go bad for Cleveland. From the first possession of the game, Cleveland starts on their 1 yard line. Then on the next series, Shedeur was trying to beat the delay of game clock, but didn't get a snap off.
Footwork and pocket presence aren't just mechanical upgrades. They're psychological markers. Stepping up instead of drifting back means believing protection will hold, trusting timing will align, and committing to a read even as the rush closes in. That belief doesn't come from encouragement. It comes from shared accountability, and when that accountability feels uneven, trust becomes fragile. There has been real growth in that area, and it isn't accidental. It's the product of deliberate preparation, film study, repetition, and learning to process speed without panicking. But that progress exists alongside uncertainty. Development can happen inside unstable environments, but it always comes at a higher cost. The toll isn't just physical. It's mental. Being part of a tightly bonded rookie class adds another layer. Watching teammates receive recognition, even partial acknowledgement like alternate honors, signals momentum, but it also reinforces a harsher truth: recognition is temporary. It's incomplete. The goal isn't to be noticed. It's to be undeniable. Anything less leaves space for doubt, debate, and eventually replacement.
You know, quarterbacks wear wristbands with play calls.
Ain't no way they give that man the wrong wristband.
They're saying they gave him the wrong wristband on the sideline.
So after the first few drives, either some of the plays on the wristband was wrong or the whole wristband was wrong, but it was not the right wristband. My whole thing is being in the building, know how that go. Y'all on offense.
Ain't no way hell that
I'm
happened.
on defense, and I know how this go. Friday, Saturday, they finishing up the play sheet, and then on Saturday, they gonna give it to y'all, but they make it.
Ain't no way they had the wrong.
The only
play call.
mistakes on that are you mistype, you leave out, you leave something out, you spell something.
Footwork and pocket presence aren't just mechanical improvements. They're psychological signals. Stepping up instead of drifting back means trusting protection to hold, believing timing will hit, and committing to a read even as pressure closes in. That kind of belief isn't built through encouragement. It's built through shared accountability, and when that accountability feels uneven, trust erodes fast. There has been genuine growth, and it isn't accidental. It comes from disciplined preparation, film study, repetition, and learning to process speed without panic. But that progress exists inside uncertainty. Development can happen in unstable environments, but it always comes at a higher cost. The toll isn't only physical. It's mental. Being part of a tightly bonded rookie class adds another dimension. Seeing teammates earn recognition, even partial acknowledgement like alternate honors, signals movement in the right direction, but it also sharpens a harder truth: recognition is temporary. It's incomplete. The goal isn't to be noticed. It's to be undeniable. Anything less leaves room for doubt, debate, and eventually replacement.
Shedeur Sanders is better than Jackson Dart. And Jackson Dart's been a quarterback that a lot of people have appreciated this season, him being a rookie and all. But if we look at last week, Shedeur's 20-29, 157, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, 49 rushing yards. Jackson Dart, he threw the ball 13 times. This isn't the first time something...
What planet are we living on here? What planet are we living on that we just can't come to an agreement here that yes, he's a very popular developmental quarterback and he may get the chance to start in 2026? Is that so?
That mindset isn't born from fear. It comes from clarity. From understanding that roster spots, starting roles, and long-term plans are shaped by forces beyond individual control. Ownership decisions, front office priorities, coaching philosophies, and outside narratives all influence outcomes players can't dictate. That awareness forces a recalibration not of effort, but of expectations. The progression from early struggles against elite defenses to more controlled late-game execution tells a story of adaptation. Those early failures weren't ignored or explained away. They were absorbed, studied, and turned into reference points. Experience here isn't measured in seasons. It's measured in exposure to pressure and in learning how to respond when plans fall apart. Comfort rarely produces growth. Being tested by top-tier defenses forces adjustments that no film session alone can teach. Regaining composure late in games isn't accidental. It comes from rhythm, from trusting instincts, and from allowing preparation to override hesitation. But that balance is fragile. It depends on repetition and reinforcement. Any disruption, schematic shifts, organizational uncertainty can threaten it. And when comparisons to other quarterbacks inevitably surface, especially those operating in more stable environments, the contrast is hard to miss. Some situations offer clarity and commitment. Others exist in gray space. Recognizing that difference without bitterness shows maturity, but it doesn't change the reality of it.
Man, look, I don't know where to start, but let's talk about it. So I've been tagged in probably about 20 to 25 videos regarding Shedeur and the Cleveland Browns. From What She Said Sports saying that the tight end purposely stepped on Shedeur's pinky and ripped his nail off, to people tagging me about the offensive line play. And let me just say this. The offensive line is terrible. Terrible. But I also know they're not going to pick up another lineman.
Not feeling a guaranteed commitment isn't presented as a slight. It's presented as reality. Control begins and ends with preparation and performance. Wins matter. Clean execution matters. Everything else lives outside the player's reach. That understanding strips away any illusion of power and forces attention onto responsibility. There's no attempt to predict outcomes or demand assurances, only an acceptance that decisions will be made regardless, shaped by factors that remain unseen and sometimes unexplained. That acceptance isn't passive. It's selective. Energy is invested where it still has value. Enjoying the present becomes a quiet resistance to future anxiety, because fixation on what might happen obscures what is happening. Lessons get missed. Opportunities slip by. Staying grounded allows growth even when the destination remains uncertain. Rivalries like Pittsburgh carry emotional weight for fans, but for a quarterback trying to establish himself, every opponent presents the same test. Preparation doesn't change. Execution doesn't change. Adaptability doesn't change. Motivation is internal, not inherited from history. Winning matters, but consistency matters more. The way each game is approached reveals how the role is understood. Treating every matchup with equal seriousness avoids emotional swings that erode focus, and that brings everything back to the original shock. The idea that a young quarterback could already be contemplating a future away from Cleveland isn't startling because it's dramatic. It's startling because it's plausible. It fits the patterns of the league. It aligns with the cautious language being used. And it matches the unmistakable emphasis on uncertainty.
Quarterback and the head coach and the offensive coordinator, it like this.
Yeah.
Like no way you should have walked out there on that field with the wrong wristband. Ain't nothing you can tell me the Brown organization can say to tell me that y'all allowed this man to walk out with the wrong wristband. The person that leading your team out there on the field walk out there with the wrong wristband on.
Nothing about this feels performative. It feels deliberate, measured, and grounded in experience gained faster than expected. When a player speaks more about preparation than guarantees, it usually means guarantees aren't being offered. Whether this leads to a move or a renewed commitment remains unknown. What's clear is that the ground beneath this situation isn't solid, it's shifting, shaped by performance, politics, and perception. Navigating it requires more than talent, it requires awareness and restraint. The next stretch of games won't just be evaluated for wins. Every snap, every decision, every play becomes part of a larger argument about value and direction. The most revealing aspect isn't the possibility of leaving, it's the comfort with uncertainty. That comfort signals preparation for multiple outcomes and an understanding that careers are shaped as much by timing and circumstance as by ability. For Cleveland, this should spark reflection. Development doesn't happen in isolation. Stability matters. Communication matters. When players frame their focus around the present alone, it signals that the future hasn't been clearly defined. For Shedeur Sanders, the path forward remains unwritten. What's evident is a refusal to cling to assumptions, a commitment to doing the work, learning from failure, and staying grounded no matter what comes next. This isn't a dramatic exit announcement. It's something subtler and more unsettling, a calm acknowledgement that the door is open and nothing is guaranteed on the other side. That openness reframes everything. Every practice rotation, every play call adjustment, every public comment from the organization will now be interpreted through a different lens.
Like all races, and they're saying, I just bought my 73-year-old grandmother watched Shedeur. Name me a person that didn't have that type of effect on anybody. And so people don't understand. It's like people are rooting for a guy that was a 5th round pick. It's only one guy that has on that team that's top 50 in jersey sales. That's Shedeur. And he kills you in his interviews because he has that balance of being arrogant, flashy, which I'm cool with because he put the work in. But then he also killed him.
Once uncertainty is acknowledged publicly, even subtly, it becomes impossible to pretend everything is settled behind the scenes. The silence between statements starts to speak louder than official reassurances. The timing makes it even more layered. This isn't an off-season rumor or a post-contract haze. It's happening while games are still being played, evaluations are ongoing, and the on-field product is still being shaped. That overlap creates tension. Players must perform freely while knowing their future may hinge on variables beyond their control. The tension doesn't always show up in box scores, but it profoundly affects how risks are taken and how leadership is asserted. Quarterbacks are usually insulated from this ambiguity early on. Organizations prefer to project confidence, even amid internal debates. When that projection cracks, it signals that alignment hasn't fully formed. Alignment between coaching vision, front office strategy, and player development is fragile, and once strained, it takes deliberate effort to restore. There's also the reality of narrative momentum. Once a storyline like this gains traction, it becomes self-sustaining. Media scrutiny intensifies. Fan discussions sharpen. Every incomplete pass gets tied to questions of stability. Every strong drive sparks debate over whether it's enough to secure the player's future. That environment can either forge resilience or accelerate separation.
They're just going to rock with who they have. The tight end stepping on his pinky, that's a long shot to me, but, it is what it is. And I know a lot of y'all just hate Shedeur. Y'all hate him because of his name. Y'all hate him because he smiles too much. Y'all hate because he gives the correct answers. Y'all just dislike him. Another portion of y'all just wants to talk about the negative.
What stands out is the refusal to lean into victimhood. There's no appeal to sympathy, no framing of unfairness. Instead, the emphasis is on responsibility and control. That doesn't eliminate frustration, but it redirects it inward toward preparation, execution, and mastery. That mindset often separates players who survive transitions from those who get lost in them. From an organizational perspective, this creates a crossroads. Evaluating while maintaining ambiguity may preserve flexibility, but it risks eroding trust. Trust isn't just about believing in ability, it's about believing in intent. Players want clarity on whether development is a shared goal or a temporary experiment. When that question lingers, commitment becomes conditional on both sides. Either way, this moment marks a shift. The conversation is no longer just about development within Cleveland, it's about agency, timing, and readiness for what comes next. That's what makes it compelling. Not the shock value, but the implications. In a league built on projections that rarely hold, acknowledging uncertainty may be the most honest position possible. And honesty, though unsettling, often precedes decisive change.